Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Since July of 2021, Jake and his friends have interviewed professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and many more. Who will they be chatting with in this week's interview? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. I'm your host, Jake Deffinbaugh. With me today is our co-host, Chris Bixby and Matt Bingel. How you guys doing?
We're great.
Good.
How are you?
We're good. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you.
Great. And who do we have today?
What do we have for today? Well, she's a writer for a lot of things. She's writing for Sesame Street for between 1984 through 2002. She done some stuff for the Muppets as well, which we're going to talk about later. She composed some Sesame songs, including Cereal Girl, Counting on the Weather, and some others too, and wrote some books, which we're going to talk about too. And she's also one of the co-creators of one of the most long-running segments, Elmo's World. Here she is, Cathi Turow. Happy to have you here, Cathi. How are you?
I'm fine today. How are you guys doing?
We're good.
Doing great.
Doing great.
Doing great.
Thank you.
Happy
Thank
to have you here.
Yes.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for inviting
Thank
me.
you.
Of
Yes.
course.
Yes. A pleasure. So to kick things off, we know who you are, but for those who don't, would you care to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. So let's see. I've been a writer for children's television for a really long time. But along the way, I've written for a lot of other shows. And I write a lot of lyric. I've also written a lot of lyrics to a lot of the Sesame Street songs. I know you mentioned that, but that might be something, to talk about a little bit more. I currently, after really like 40 years of writing for children's television, I would still do it, but I kind of transitioned into writing for adults and writing sort of lifestyle stories that are fun and crazy for people for Newsday. And I write a food column. So I've kind of interestingly found writing, found different ways to write throughout my life. And here I am.
Awesome.
Awesome. So can you talk about like what your background was like and how you grew up?
Sure. So until I was 10, I lived in Manhattan. And my father was my parents passed on. My father was a writer for advertising and kind of an artist. And my mother was a music teacher, actually at the Dalton School. And so I come from two artists, and art is finding what you love to do, and creatively especially was just the always the message I got, follow your heart, follow your creative instincts. I've always had that as part of me. And then when I was 11, we moved to Long Island, and I guess I just always wanted to write. I always liked writing, and I always expressed myself through words and through music and through lyrics and that sort of thing. And I went to Syracuse University, and I got a degree in children's television. So the message was always, the artist in you was the most important kind of thing. So I've never done anything else except one year I worked in a hamburger. One summer I worked for a hamburger fast food place. That's everything. Anyway, but was food for thought.
Yeah.
For sure. So, I guess, some people choose, are you going to follow your art, or are you going to use it as a hobby or an interest, which both are great. But I guess I always felt like this is what I want to do. I wasn't happy doing anything else, that kind of thing. So I always found a way with it. Sometimes it works better than others, but, did I tell you enough? I mean, about where does it? No, I kind of answered from a professional point of view. I mean, I'm married. I have 2 adult children. I have a cat.
Oh, awesome!
Nice, really nice.
So, how were you inspired to get into writing?
I think it was always some kind of a way that I felt that I expressed myself. I always felt like I was an outsider, that I was different. And somehow I used to, so even in high school, I would write songs about for children for some reason. My voice, my creative voice came out for as a voice for children, even though I was older than the audience I was, So I would write about a hot dog who was surrounded by a lot of hamburgers, who didn't know what to do with himself, and things like that. And I used to also. I used to also, like, when I was maybe around 10 years old, I used to watch television shows and then make up episodes that of my own and act them out. So,
wow.
Wow.
What TV shows specifically, if you remember?
I liked, well, I'm older than you, so these are shows before your time, but them show, like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. was really big when I was little, about 10 years old, and I used to have this crush on David McCallum, so I used to write adventures for us and act them out. And I used to and I had Dr. Kildare. I liked that show too, so I used to make up adventures of being with Dr. Kildare. I ended up marrying a doctor, so I guess together. You never know, like, what means something to you, but
Nope.
Definitely.
But anyway, so I guess it just sort of came naturally to me. I think also I started when I really started writing as when I more than a kid, as a little girl, writing TV shows at 10 years old. The first time I used words was through lyrics to songs. I actually was a music major in college, and I, played the guitar, and so the lyrics were really the way I expressed myself. And then I just found, as I wrote more and more songs, what I liked more than writing the music was writing the lyrics, and then that sort of transitioned into scripts and stuff like that.
Nice.
So.
Nice.
Awesome.
So now, before becoming a writer, I know you first started working as a production assistant. Can you kind of talk about how Sesame Street kind of came into play for you?
Yeah, it's actually, it's interesting, and I think it's true for many of the original writers. I'm not the only one. I was in college, and I happened to turn on Sesame Street, and at that time it wasn't brand new, but it was kind of new. It was really, a newer show. And my eyes just popped out of my head, and something in me just said, I have to write for that show. I just get that show. That's me. That's where I'm going. There was something about it that was like a fit for me in my head. And so I actually, at the time I was in college, I could create something called a selected studies degree. And I put together a children's television degree just so that I could write for Sesame Street one day. I mean, that was like my dream. That I got a job after college working for WOR-TV for about maybe less than a year, where I was working in production, and Romper Room was a children's show there. But I was moving along there in terms of my career, but I heard about a job for a secretary in the administrative office at what they used to call the Children's Television Workshop, which is now Sesame Workshop. And I left WOR-TV to take this ridiculous job that I was just unqualified, well overqualified for. In fact, the person who hired me looked at me and he said, why are you applying for this job? And I said, I love this company. He said, I'm going to give you a chance. And so I worked in this, I had this job where basically if someone said, can you please go to the supply closet and get a stapler for me? I would go and get a stapler, it was, but I wanted to get my foot in the door at the Children's Television Workshop, and I did, that's how I actually started there was, and while I was, giving out staplers and glue, whatever I was doing, I wrote scripts for the show that I thought would work. And I actually found my way into the producer's office. So at that time, there was a new producer. So I guess he was looking for new people because he was new. And he liked what I wrote. And he said, I'm going to make you a production assistant so that you can come to the studio every day and you can learn what's going on and how to write, how the show comes together. And then I'll promote you to a writing position. So that's actually how I got in.
Nice.
Oh,
That's
awesome.
awesome.
I don't know if they would do that anymore these days. Someone creating a job for you, that's not as common that I know of, but you never
Yeah,
know.
well, it's definitely changed.
Yeah.
It's
Sure.
definitely changed. So, what was it like getting to meet and work with the cast and crew of Sesame?
Oh, so it was great. It was like this wonderland because I loved the show so much. It was, oh wow, here's the set and here's the Snuffleupagus and here's Big Bird and the people, were brilliant. I feel like it was such a gift to be able to have worked with those original people who, um, started the original cast, and because it was their vision, and the original directors and producers and artists that put this together, composers, you know what I mean. It still is great, but when you meet the people whose original idea it was, and you have an opportunity to learn from them, it was just amazing. And I loved being there. I loved being a production assistant there. And I moved on to assistant to the producer. But again, as I said, in my heart of hearts, I always wanted to be a writer. So I had to make a transition there, because I knew I wanted to write. And sometimes, I don't know if you've had this experience in your lives, but if you don't have an experience in an area, you have to find a way to get it.
Definitely, yeah.
You won't be promoted. You know what I mean? Some people will take a chance with you, but some people say you've got to have done this somewhere else, kind of thing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
definitely.
Exactly. I'm kind of wondering, what was your like your first writing job?
So actually, from Sesame Street, I don't remember how I got this, but I ended up as an associate producer, associate editor at Scholastic magazines. I don't remember how I met the woman who was the person who started that magazine. But in any case, so I left Sesame Street because this was a writing job. I was going to be one of the editors of this new magazine where you were teaching math to kids, but it was creatively. In other words, you wrote about people who had careers in math. You wrote comic strips, but in order to be able to answer the answers of the comic strip, you had to make, do a little addition, or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I had regular writing gigs, every day, and editing. And that was the first time, whereas somebody said, here's what you have to do. And it has to be done by 5 o'clock today, or tomorrow. And here's who you have to interview, you know what I mean? So I would call that a real writing job because it's a real assignment, kind of thing. And I did that for like a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. So one of the projects you worked on during your time in Sesame was a special Christmas Eve on Sesame Street, which honestly amazing special. What was it like?
I love that special.
To work on that?
Yeah, that was just, well, at that time, taking a step back from what we were just saying, I was a production assistant. And so my job on that particular special, well, in other words, I was part of the staff. So when they do a special, they would use a staff, in one way or another, and they'd use all the characters, of course, and the actors, everything. And my job was continuity, which was to take pictures of what everybody looked like in every scene, so that if we had to have someone behind the door open the door, that they look the same when they behind the door as when they come through the door, that kind of thing.
Okay.
But I have to say, that was one of the most brilliant productions I've ever worked on. And it's interesting that so many years ago we made it, but you still feel, you can sense it, because every little segment was like a little gem. It was Ernie and Bert, and then there were the songs, and the moments with Big Bird, everything, and everyone cared so much. Like everyone's heart was in this, like 100%. And so I guess it shows. I guess it came across, because it was a beautiful story. I think the message and everything, and it was a great use of all the characters. So that's one of my favorite things. I'm glad you asked me about that.
It is. It is a brilliant special.
It was a wonderful special.
It's amazing.
Yes.
I even watched it. We even watched it like last year. And that's
Yeah.
We did.
Yeah. Probably one of my favorite Sesame Christmas specials ever.
Yeah, and I think, again, it was
amazing.
The original characters with the original intentions, that it hadn't been diluted in any way yet, because it just was what it was supposed to be. And I think that shines through, in that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
So going back to writing, you had brought this up a little bit earlier. After initially leaving Sesame Street, you had worked as an editor and a writer for Scholastic as well as Muppet Magazine.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, Muppet Magazine was a magazine in the mid 80s, which kind of featured the Muppets and had some celebrities in there too. But
Yeah.
can you talk about your experience with Muppet Magazine?
Yeah, that was a great job. I at Scholastic, I realized that as much as I liked the job itself, it was supposed to be about real things. And if I found that if I didn't get the information I wanted, like if I interviewed somebody who had a career in math and I thought, oh, I'm going to write about this, and then they'd say, no, I don't really use math, I would make it up. I would make, you're supposed to do that. So I realized I'm really more of a fiction writer than I am someone who writes for like an educational magazine, because you're not supposed to do that. And so I had met some people, I guess, that were working on Muppet Magazine, because you know what, in this business, people call it the children's television merry-go-round. It's like the same people in different jobs,
Yeah.
at different points. And so anyway, and so I got this job writing. Muppet Magazine was pretty new, and basically every article was written by a Muppet through, of course, a human voice. So if I interviewed a celebrity with Miss Piggy, I would act like Miss Piggy when I was interviewing a celebrity.
Oh, wow.
And what would she want to know? Not what I want to know, but what Miss Piggy want to know? Or Kermit, what would Kermit want to know? Or Gonzo. And those are a different group of Muppets. They're the Muppet Show Muppets rather than the Sesame Muppets. So it was an interesting, different community. But we used to fly out to LA for a day if we got an interview with, like, back in those days, like Family Ties was a show, we them, and The Facts of Life. There were sitcoms on that we would go out and interview the actors and then come back. It was really fun. And then we would do a photo shoot. So, the Muppets would look like they were with these celebrities. And the celebrities always had fun with it. They liked, like pretending that they were being interviewed by Kermit, or something like that, rather than a regular person.
Yeah, I mean, a celebrity getting to appear with the Muppets, that's like an honor in itself right there.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was always interested. That was always really fun. I mean, my first interview actually on that for that magazine was with Drew Barrymore when she was 8 years old.
Wow.
She was in E.T.
Oh,
and
that's
E.T.
amazing.
had just come out.
Awesome.
So she was this little 8-year-old girl, and I was young too, not that young, and I remember, she's so cute, and the voice was the voice of Sweetums, who it's a more obscure character. The Sweetums is a big furry brown monster, but anyway, that was the first time that was my first interview, and I wonder if she would remember that.
Wow.
Anyway, but I remember it. It was fun,
Wow.
Now I'm curious. Was it difficult being like those characters, like getting into those characters' heads for that?
I liked it. I mean, I didn't. No, for me, I didn't find it too difficult. I found it sometimes more difficult to be straight. Even now, the reason I've always written for Muppets and animated characters and things like that is because it's not a regular voice. There's some funny edge to it, because humor writing has always been my thing. Even when I try to do something straightforward, it always comes out a little goofy. That's just my style. So it just felt it wasn't. Yeah, it just felt like fun. I liked their quirkiness, and I could relate to it. Like Gonzo, who was, I don't know, he liked to eat. I don't remember now. I shouldn't say eat, but he liked things like fungus.
Yeah.
Things, it was like offbeat kind of person, little creature. Yeah. So that was always fun. I loved that job. But then Sesame Street came along, and that's what I really wanted to do. So I made a transition again, to the show.
Right. So speaking of Sesame Street, now in 1984 you came back as a writer. What do you remember what your first writing job was for Sesame Street?
Yeah.
Writer.
Well, I auditioned. What happened was I was at Muppet Magazine, and I heard at that point that Sesame Street was looking for new writers. In other words, a lot of it is timing. Being in the right place at the right time. Plus, I knew the people from Sesame Street because I've been a PA there for years. So the first thing, let's see, there was, as an audition piece, there was a little Muppet segment where Grover was trying to tell everybody how to fall asleep or something, and he kept
yes,
trying
I
different
remember that.
versions of that. That was like my audition piece that I got the job on that show. And then the first actual show I wrote, like meaning that on the street, where there were like 5 segments in those days in between the animations and the films, was Big Bird and Snuffy. Snuffy played something called a harmonica. This goes way back. I don't know if you know that show. It's a long time ago, but he basically had a huge instrument that was a combination between a harp and a harmonica or something.
Oh wow!
And whatever it was.
That's cool.
Yeah, but I wrote
Wow.
like over 100 shows, over time for that show. I mean, a lot of different episodes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was a kind of job that, some jobs you outgrow and you're like, oh, okay, I've been here, but done everything I can here. That there was so much going on with Sesame Street between the films, the animations, the characters, the wide variety of things we taught and everything, the celebrities that you just kept going. You could keep going, and not be bored. It was
Exactly.
a challenge,
Definitely.
Yeah. So do you have a favorite Sesame Street Muppet or human character you wrote for?
I always loved them. I think Snuffy and Big Bird as friends. I loved it. They were such good friends, and I loved that they were so funny. They were always trying to accommodate each other and falling over each other's feet. Like, you go first. No, you go first. No, but I couldn't because you're my best friend. But you're my
They
best
always
friend.
do that.
Yeah,
they always do that.
Yeah, and it was just great. I thought I just thought they're just great friends, and a great way to show what friendship could be. And I loved Oscar because I think we all have that. I know I have that grouch in me, and like it was a chance to really like just let that whole part of yourself be positive with a positive spin. And I like Grover because he's a little neurotic, a little over the top in the way he tries to do things, and I don't like that too.
Grover's
so
awesome.
it was fun too. But they're all great characters.
Yes.
There's so many.
Oh yeah,
different
there
reasons.
are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about from the human cast? Did you have a favorite human cast member to write for?
I loved I think Maria or Sonia. I still talk to her sometimes. Because I thought she had a great comedic sense. If you wrote something that you knew someone had to play it out with something genuine, but also comedic. It had understood comedic timing. To me, she understood that the best, and I knew she would get that right. That kind of thing. So, but they were all, again, all the actors had a different reason for being. They were also. They weren't all generic or interchangeable, let's say. So, if you had a certain segment you wrote that was more, let's say, heartfelt and sweet, like, okay, maybe that's for Bob. It wasn't just, we'll pop anybody in. It had to be right for each human character.
Yeah.
And they weren't supposed to be Muppets. They were supposed to be people,
of course.
like with human qualities rather than, Muppets that are a little bit different.
Yeah.
So this may be a tough question, but do you have any favorite episodes, inserts, or songs that you wrote for Sesame Street?
Yeah. I think what's interesting, and I've noticed this with other people who have written shows before, is the things that everybody knows, that I've written aren't necessarily my favorites, and then my favorites, not everybody doesn't necessarily know, but I mean, a lot of people know the song "Serial Girl."
Which we actually previously had Ivy Austin on.
Yep.
Oh, really? Right.
Yes,
right.
we did.
Yes. She's awesome.
Yeah.
How's she doing?
She's
good.
doing great.
She's good. Yeah.
She's doing good.
It was her birthday just recently.
Oh, she's a lot of fun. I mean, I have, and her dad, Danny,
Oh yes, Danny Epstein.
was a music producer. Let's see. I wrote the lyric. I came up with the idea and the scenario and wrote the lyrics for "It's Hip to Be a Square." I didn't get physical credit for it because I think Huey Lewis and the News, the only way they give us permission is if they got the credit. But that was my song. I mean, I'm proud of that because that's that song, it really had something to say, you know.
Yeah. I remember that one really well. That's one of the celebrity parodies that I think I remember the most from Sesame.
Oh, that's cool.
Because
That's
they used to show it a lot back in the day. They used to
yeah,
repeat it a lot.
yeah. And there was another one, Kermit News, where it's he's with the fairy godmother, and Cinderella's trying to find a dress to wear to the prom, to the
Oh,
ball.
Oh
yes.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
I
Ends
remember
up
that.
wearing the dress instead of her. That one was on a lot. You know, that was a fun one.
Yeah.
And Monster Peace Theater, the 39 Steps, so 39
yeah.
stairs.
Oh,
you know.
yes. Love that one.
Those were on a
Yes,
lot.
I
Those
remember
weren't
that.
necessarily. I liked them a lot, but my favorites were more obscure little ones. It's funny.
Yeah.
I ever read sometimes I read a lot of biographies by celebrities, let's say, or autobiographies rather, and they'll talk about these different films that they were in, and then they won't talk about ones that I love, and I'm like, why do they talk about that one? You know, I mean, I guess it seems to be consistent. I guess your experience with something personal isn't necessarily what becomes the most popular sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do you want me to talk a little bit about Elmo's World? Because I know, or you're not up to that. Because that,
Well,
yeah, that was.
we're actually about very soon going to start talking about that. So
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Elmo's
kind of
World.
funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Because what happened with that was you know, Sesame Street, it used to be an hour long, and it had a certain formula, you know, where we have an animation and a film, and then the street pieces, and the world changed, and a lot of children's shows, almost all, became a half hour, and Sesame Street was still an hour, and so we were told by researchers and the executives, you have to fill the hour somehow, find a way to fill this hour in a different way. So all the writers sat down together for days, sort of brainstorming. And one writer, who's Judy Fordberg, who passed on, had this idea to do something called Elmo's World. And so it's like 6 of the writers, she and I and 4 other people, went off together for like 2 weeks. We met every day. And we thought, if Elmo lived in this little world by himself, what would he do? What would it be like? What would he do? What would each little segment be about? And we actually created this 20-minute segment called Elmo's World. And it's funny because we laugh about it now, because Sesame Street had to make some kind of, transition in terms of its format. We're thinking of calling the show Waiting for Elmo's World instead of Sesame Street, because all the kids liked that the best. But what it was positioned, it was found that after 40 minutes of watching Sesame Street, kids got bored. So we positioned it at the 40-minute mark. In other words, if you're at 40 minutes into Sesame Street, Elmo's World went on, and ran to almost the end of the whole show. It was just interesting, so that it was a way to keep the kids with the whole hour, when so many other shows were a half hour. It was an interesting challenge. And then it also Elmo's World lent it to itself to as you said, jackets, exercise, everything. Elmo could be thinking about anything, and so that could be the theme for the show. So it had a lot of shelf life and leg room, and that kind of thing. And everybody loved Elmo.
Oh yeah, Elmo's one of my favorite.
Same.
Like Elmo
of all time, really.
Yeah.
Same. I think my 3 favorites are probably Grover, Elmo, and Cookie Monster.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Which speaking of Elmo, we actually did previously interview current puppeteer for Elmo, again, Ryan Dillon. Yes.
Yeah, he does a fantastic job with Elmo.
Yeah.
So keep going. Kevin Clash legacy, what Kevin's done, Elmo. I think Ryan's doing a great job.
Yeah. Really, because I if you work on the show like I did, or as I did for a long time, if you change if the puppeteer is different, even if it sounds the same, you can tell the difference. But with Elmo, you really can. He's very, very close, I think, to the original voice, Kevin's voice.
Yeah, Kevin and Ryan, they're very.
They're
very same.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So
Ryan, he's an awesome guy that we just all piece.
Yeah.
Fun.
On the topic of Elmo's World, do you have a favorite episode you worked on?
Believe it or not, I like the jackets one the most, I think.
Yes.
Because it was
one.
actually was a really early one
remember
early
that.
on. And I liked it also because it was obscure. Like at that time, my children were like 3 and 4 years old, and putting on a jacket was like a big deal. Where you're going to put it on the floor and shove your hands into it, and how are you going to put on your jacket? You don't want to put on your jacket. So I like that. You didn't often find anything about jackets on television. And then, so that was fun. I always like, sort of pushing the mold, any job I've ever had, for better or for worse, doing something that's not expected, doing something that hasn't been done before, so I think that's why I like that episode a lot.
Yeah, there are a lot of good ones, like that exercise,
yeah.
like that exercise one that Jake mentioned. That's another really good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes. Good one.
Yes.
There, I don't know what's my favorite on this world.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ones.
A lot of great ones.
Yes.
They went through like Mr. Noodle and then Mrs. Noodle, or there were different Mr. Noodles over time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think there's a friend. I know there's a couple of episodes that have all three noodles together. I think it's the Friends one and the I forgot the other one.
Then there was Elmo's World Wild Wild West. That had the 3 of them together too, I think.
Oh yeah,
that's
right.
Fun.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fun. That's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And the Happy Holidays one's really good one too.
Yeah, there are a lot of good Elmo's World ones.
Yeah.
we can keep talking about the segments because
it's
pretty good.
Yeah. My biggest contribution to Elmo's World was there used to be, I don't think they do it anymore, but a time where when Elmo, what can Elmo think about next? And he thinks of something, says, oh, the jackets. Let's say I can watch the jacket channel and then putting on the TV where they watch the channel about jackets or shoes or bananas or whatever it was, and that was that had a long life for a while. But I don't think the newer ones have that.
No.
Yeah. A lot's changed with the newer one.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. I don't watch Sesame Street as much right now, so if I don't speak about it currently so very well, it's because I kind of they're old friends.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So you also written a few celebrity appearances for Sesame. Do you have any favorite celebrity guests to work with?
Some of the celebrities said some really funny things, like well, I loved Terry Garr. A long time ago, she was like the it person on Saturday Night Live, and I wrote a script for her, which was a takeoff on Tootsie, the movie Tootsie, where she was going to Grouch school and she couldn't graduate because she wasn't grouchy enough, and she was a lot of fun. And Victor Garber came in once, and I wrote a script for him where Barkley the dog kept screwing him up, all these slapstick things kept happening to him, and he came over to me and said, this is really a big career move for me, or something like that. Just kind of funny. And just watching, even if you didn't know the celebrities, like Rosie O'Donnell played the Fairy Grouch mother.
Yes.
And it was just interesting to see what they do with what the actors do with these characters. Like I know there was a definite difference between watching the Sesame Street cast members. They were with the Muppets. They were funny, of course, but they were more human and straightforward. And a lot of the celebrities, when they would come in, were more animated and silly, and they had a different experience with the puppets. I guess it's hard to describe it, but you probably know what I mean when you watch, and that kind of So they were fun. Julie Haggerty played a pediatrician, and it was, sometimes I didn't know who was going to play. I would write the script, and then the producers found somebody. They would think, this would be fun for so and so to do, special actor to do, or something like that.
That's awesome. Yeah, there were a lot of good celebrity guests over the years.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So are you still in contact with anyone from Sesame?
Yes, and I don't know if you want me to mention names of writers or
you can. Sure.
I mean, one friend, Belinda Ward, is someone who I've always been a long time. She was another writer. She doesn't write for Sesame Street anymore, but she writes for many children's television shows.
She was another great writer for Sesame. Yeah.
So we were friends all through those years, but although it was funny, we laughed because whenever we talked to each other, we never talked about our scripts. We always just talked about which horrible parents we were. So we never collaborated in that way. But and then during the pandemic, some of the Sesame Street writers and I, who just had totally lost touch, started doing Zoom meetings together.
Oh yeah, we spoke to Emily
yeah.
Pearl Kingsley, and she mentioned that as well.
Yeah. So we see each other a lot. We kept that going, and so that's been really
That's
nice
amazing.
because like anything in life, like if you haven't seen anybody for a long time, you think, oh, we were such good friends. What happened, and what are they doing? And now we're back in each other's lives, which is really nice. And just to see what they're doing, and stuff like that.
That is great. That's
yeah.
great.
And she also talked about her son who was in Sesame.
Right.
Jason,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, Jason. Yeah.
Yeah, Jason. Yeah.
Now, recently, we sadly lost another one of the original human cast members, Bob McGrath, and we talked to Allison Bartlett a little while ago about working, closely with Bob because she was one of the human cast members as well. But as a writer, can you share any of your fondest memories from writing for him and working for him?
He was always a pleasure. He was always just this very delightful, warm, accepting person. He was always happy. Whatever you wrote, he was happy to do it and do it the best he could. And I think for me, what I loved is I loved slapstick comedy, and like getting squirted with an elephant trunk, and getting a door smashed in your face. And Bob was always this delightful foil. Like he would just not mind having all these things done to him, with shaving cream in his face or whatever.
That's right. Yeah,
he never mind. He was just.
I've probably seen videos like that, or a picture that he's in all the costume or something like that.
Yeah. So from a writing point of view, he was always so much fun to write for because you could always, Sesame Street. It's obvious, I know, but it was back in the days. I can't speak to the days, the way things are written now, but comedy was really important. Writing these shows, if something wasn't funny or at least moving, then the producers wouldn't do it. Or the head writer would say, go back and redo this. In other words, so I keep referring to the comedy that these actors could play because comedy was very important. In every show, which was always challenging, but it was just really important. And I think that's why people liked it so much, and also because the characters had a lot of layers and depth,
Of course, yeah. Definitely.
Of course. So
want me to ask you a question?
I mean, if you want.
No,
if you want. That's going on the book. Where did you come from?
Oh my gosh. It's just gonna be part of that's gonna be part of the final cut. Anyway, so I wanted to mention about the books that they actually wrote for Sesame. The Big Bird Stay on the Farm and Big Bird Joins this Carnival, and I think you might have done some books as well. What was it like? What was it like doing that?
I actually wrote those books before I wrote for Sesame Street. They were freelance jobs. I really wasn't that connected with the publishers at all. So I wasn't my favorite. I know that those books are still around. I mean, it's amazing, but I'm not that connected really with those books. So I guess some projects you're more connected and some not. That kind
right.
of
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So over the years, you've won a total of, get ready for this, folks, 14 Emmys for your contribution on Sesame. How does it feel that the show has become such a success and really still is today?
Well, I feel, first of all, the 14 Emmys, the writers, we had a team of about 20 writers when I was there. Because there's so many shows, like 100 shows that were produced every year. And so when I won an Emmy, I won as a member of the team. I mean, it was definitely, it has my name on it, but it was a team effort, like that. I'm very proud of that. I think we started something back then, in terms of talking about, Sesame Street was about not the way the world was, but the way the world could have been, or not the way the world is, but the way the world could be. And I'm very proud of trying to write a lot of material about what that means, And I think that a lot of the things, other shows that involve diversity are really, if you look way back, some of them are based on, I think, what people saw on Sesame Street a long time ago, that made it new and different, and the way we approached it, and that kind of thing. So I think the show now is a little bit different. I think it's a little more research oriented and it used to be more comedy oriented, like it was humor first no matter what.
And each season there's usually like a theme to like go by, and like when the show was an hour long and had like say like 60 to 100 or something episodes, there wasn't really a theme. It was just kind of different each time,
right? Or if it was there, it was much more subtle. I'll say that. It was, I know even from the people I know who still write the show, it's very important that certain phrases be repeated a lot of times. And, it wasn't, it was a different approach years ago, in that way. The other thing I think that's, to me, a little bit different about those days in the past and current Sesame Street is it used to be written on two levels always, for adults and children. It was not written just for children. And often if you wrote a segment or a show, it had to have both of those elements very much there. It seems to me that it's not as important, it's not as much of a priority to do that anymore. Now I don't watch the show every day, so I'm not trying to make it
right,
but so maybe, you might disagree with that, I don't know. That's just sort of my perspective on a difference between the shows back then and now, I don't know. I actually be curious. Do you know what I'm talking about? Does that make any sense or not?
Yeah.
Agree with me. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah,
it makes sense.
I mean, I think also we very, very character oriented. Everything had to be character driven. Like, would Elmo really say that? Would Oscar? Why would Oscar say that? You know what I'm saying? Like it was like they were like adult characters with real dimension.
Yeah, exactly.
Taken very, very seriously.
Definitely.
So, anyway, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was the wrong thing to say, but I don't know.
No.
My perspective.
No.
So, in addition to Sesame Street, you co-developed the spin-off Play With Me Sesame. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about?
You mean like the Play With Me Sesame?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, after writing the regular Sesame Street for a long time, I'll be honest, there were huge budget cuts, and I was part of a big budget cut, so were other writers, and so I was looking for other jobs. There were other writing positions, and it just turned out a writing team over at Noggin had come up with this idea for Play With Me Sesame, but they didn't really know Sesame Street. So I was there as like their consultant. So for example, Ernie and Bert, they were supposed to be on these play dates together. It was about one big play. Every show was about they were on a play date with the different characters.
Yeah.
But then what would those characters really do on those play dates? Because again, I came from the show where they wouldn't just sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. There would be a reason for it.
Right.
It's something within the character that would make them sing that song or whatever they would do. So that was interesting because it was sort of taking this other way to approach Sesame Street and the characters and bringing what I knew from the show and putting them together. So that was an interesting process, and it was just another way to do it. It was just another way to do it.
Definitely. Definitely. Play With Me Sesame was a great show.
Oh yes, I remember that show a lot.
Same.
Yeah.
I think it was
Sprout.
Yes,
Sprout.
Yeah, I started watching it from Sprout, so I know it was originally on Noggin.
Right, right. It came from Noggin.
Yeah.
And then
from the early gen of Noggin, because I didn't grow up with that era. But then when Sprout came to go to that show, I started watching it, and I started watching that show a lot.
Same.
Yeah.
So
good show.
Yeah. So another PBS show you worked on was creating the series Planet Matzo Ball. How did that idea kind of come about?
Um, my children were going to a Jewish day school, where I was seeing sort of like the creative stuff that was coming out of those kinds of environments, and I thought that would be fun to try to take Sesame Street sensibility and see if you put that into like what Hanukkah could be, or Passover could be. What would those two things be like? And so I worked with one of the producers from Sesame Street, and we pitched sort of this idea about these aliens from another planet called Planet Matzo Ball, who don't know anything about Passover, and they don't know anything about Hanukkah, but they're Jewish, and so it was sort of an interesting challenge. It was fun. It was a really fun. It ran on PBS for a few years on those holidays. Every year.
So on Disney, you wrote for the series Out of the Box. How did that come about?
Again, a lot of it is what I was calling the children's television merry-go-round. It's like somebody said, "Oh, they're looking for writers on this show, and you want to, meet the producer." Okay, so that's how that came about. I only wrote a few shows for that, but it was interesting because it was quite different than Sesame Street in that.
Yeah,
it
really was.
Yeah, I mean, in that, like, for example, the kids on Sesame Street, they came from daycare centers. They had no acting experience. They were just kids who were kids. And when I went for a show I wrote for Out of the Box, I remember going to sit on the set, watch the show tape, and each kid, the 4-year-olds that were there that were on the show, they each had an acting coach and an agent. And when the kids were saying lines, they were coaching them and telling them to say it this way and say it that way. And it was just another way to do that. But I had not seen that before. Behind the scenes, it's a nice show and everything. Just like on Sesame Street, if your clothes were dirty, you went to the laundromat. And I remember I wrote something about the laundromat. And when I went to watch my show tape, they changed it to the dry cleaner. But that was just a little more upscale than Sesame.
Yeah.
Little things like that. But you notice them, because Disney has its own brand, obviously. It was a different brand, but it was also a nice show.
Yeah, it is, and I'm glad it's streaming on Disney Plus.
Yeah, pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Are those new shows, or they're new? Maybe you don't know. Are they the old ones?
No,
they're the old ones.
They're the old ones.
Okay, that's why I get a 45-cent residual check from them. Now, thanks for telling me that. I always wondered, like, why are they sending me 43 cents? You never know how you're going to find the answers to these questions.
No.
Anyway.
Do you have any favorite episodes you wrote for that show, Out of the Box?
I remember one about just everyone makes mistakes.
I remember that one. Yeah.
That one. I remember liking that one. Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Nice.
You guys are really well versed. You know your stuff. Every time I bring something up, like, yeah, we've seen that.
Yeah, Out of the Box, and Sesame Street too, but Out of the Box, that was one of the shows I watched on Disney a lot when I was little.
Yeah, past Disney, yeah.
That was, I like that show. I thought it had a nice place in life, and everything.
Yeah.
Definitely. And now, Tony and Vivian both have TikTok, and oh my gosh.
They have quite a following on TikTok.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. They even Tony and Vivian even duet each other where they sing the So Long Farewell song.
Yeah, at the end,
yeah.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah, because I remember somebody telling me not very recently, like, oh, my kids watch Sesame Street, let's say. And what they meant was they watched like individual YouTube segments of something.
Yeah.
Like they don't.
Oh, okay.
They didn't mean that they watched the whole show. They just watched like 3 minutes or 10 minutes. Just interesting perspective. Just a different way with all these different social media versions of things.
Yeah. There are lots of videos like that out there on YouTube now.
Yeah.
Even the episode was on YouTube too.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah.
one of the most recent children's shows that you've worked on is the series Pinkalicious and Peterrific.
Right.
Terrific show.
Yeah, yeah.
So what's that show like?
That was really fun. That was actually my friend Belinda, who I mentioned before. She was the head writer. So that's how I ended up working on that show. And
Wow.
it was it was interesting because the show was based on all these Pinkalicious books. I mean, ultimately they weren't all the episodes are not based on the books, but that's sort of where they were launched from that idea. And so we were sort of working with a person who was a brilliant lady who loved her character, and she had a real sense of what this character would and wouldn't do. And then we were bringing that, but they were in book form, and then we were making that into an animated form, which it has a different life. All of a sudden, and what does she speak like? What are her friends like? What's her world like, and everything.
Yeah.
And I liked that. She was a competent girl, Pinkalicious, but also that there were, if you had ever noticed, there's no technology on purpose. No one has, a phone, or, any modern, there's no watching television. Everything is from their imaginations when they have adventures on the show. It's always like, let's be this and let's do that, but it's not with a television or with a radio or with a smartphone or anything like that, or an iPod or iPad or anything. And that was interesting, what I mean, to write something in the real world when those things exist, but these children don't have them. And it was a nice way to sort of, I think, set a lot of creative examples for kids. Just play and imagine.
Definitely, yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
So now, after working on children's shows for many years, you ventured into both adult writing and food writing. Can you kind of talk about like how that sort of transitioned and what those experiences are like?
Yeah. I think I started to talk about how one thing I loved so much about Sesame Street was that it was written when I was there very much for adults and kids. And what I really missed with a lot of the other, we didn't talk about them, but other shows that I worked on was they were really written directly for children, and the adult part was not there. And I missed that. I liked writing parodies. I liked writing slapstick and things that adults would laugh at, and so I started to develop this adult voice, and I also just hate to cook, so I made up this idea for a newspaper column about being a foodie and being a takeout queen, and not, and what do I find in the neighborhood to write about that you don't have to cook. And I pitched it to a newspaper and they liked it, and so I still write about that. And then with lifestyle stories that I write for Newsday, which is a very big Long Island a newspaper, it's about what people are doing, what kids are doing, and that kind of thing. And what I write about, like upscale pet hotels. I write about quirky stuff, and I just like or painting on chocolate, or where can you go where you can make your kids can be creative and make a big mess, or something like that. Writing is a journey, I think, when you move on from one place in your life, and how many times could you write a song about the number 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of happened too. You just wear out after. Like, okay, I've done all this. I've said what I have to say. So now where can I go next with this?
Yeah.
So overall, do you have any specific funny or interesting behind the scenes stories from your writing work you can share?
From any
from Sesame Street or
behind the scenes
or in general?
Yeah, let me think. I think that I would call this behind the scenes. When I was first hired to write for Sesame Street, I knew it had to be a funny show. I knew whatever I wrote had to be funny, and I was a little nervous about not being able to meet that need. And so I used to go to what used to be the Museum of Broadcasting, but and I would watch all of these children's shows. Classic comedy shows like Jack Benny's segments or Your Show of Shows, which was like a lot of comedic sketches, or Ernie Kovacs, Abbott and Costello, Laurel and Hardy, and I would analyze what made those segments funny and why. And then I would take those segments and I would write them. I would use the formats to write Sesame Street. And I knew then that they were going to be funny because I was taking them from funny shows, the form, the pacing and the format, and that kind of thing. So that I guess that's behind the scenes, but I think that's it. If anyone's listening or watching this, I think that's an interesting approach to writing for children, is not so much, here's something that I think is funny, I'll just wing it, but really try to school yourself a little bit on comedy. What makes something funny? What did the masters do that made this joke work? And then plug it in, let the characters in their own words say those kinds of things or do those kinds of things.
Right.
Does that make sense? I know that's a little.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. So do you have any memorabilia or anything from any of the projects you've worked on with you that you'd like to show or you can talk about?
I couldn't really bring them because they're kind of awkward and funny to hold up, but I did save, I did a show way before Donald Trump was president, when he was just Donald Trump, called Ronald Grump. And he he wanted to replace Oscar's can with a series of other cans sold attached, and called it a condominium. And I have like a drawing that the set artist made, so that that I saved.
Gosh.
Oh wow.
That was funny. And then like once I wrote a lullaby for the Snuffleupagus, and there was like this pretty picture that someone, again, the set artist made of Snuffleupagus flying over clouds, and I took that picture and I used to put over my son's bed when he was a little boy, sleeping under this. So there's fun things you can get from the sets. You just have to take it before it disappears.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I don't have it to show, but one thing that is really fun on any of these kinds of shows is that, like, let's say I would write Oscar is going to have a liver, whipped cream, and strawberry with olives pie. And so you would go to the set to watch the show tape, and the prop master would walk over to you with this pie and say, "Is this what you were thinking of?" Like, "Oh yeah, there's the stupid idea you have about, combining liver and whipped cream and olives and strawberries, like somebody actually made the pie." So it's, those were kind of fun. I didn't take that home, but it's a fun part of children's television, I think.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
So overall, what do you enjoy most about being a writer?
I like making happy endings, or I like making endings that I want to happen. I do. I think, the world is a hard place, but if you're sitting in, especially for children, you can make anything happen. And I like, it's a way for me personally to express myself, express what's bothering me, or express what I think is wrong with the world that I want to make right, or make people, I guess, ultimately make people laugh. I love to make people laugh, and writing is a way to do that,
So we've talked a lot about your work in the past. Can you share any projects you are working on now?
Well, I am still writing these lifestyle stories. That's a current thing. But one project I'd love to develop more is I wrote a self-published book a few years ago about, I took the Sesame Street character, the sensibility rather, and carried it to older age. So I created this place called Over the Hill on the Yellow Brick Road, meaning older. And all the character, and I go to this, the wind sweeps me to this place where everything is growing older. So like dandelions are gray at the stage where, you blow the fluff away. The tooth fairy wants to become an implant fairy because she's older, and she doesn't want to deliver so many teeth anymore, but she doesn't want to give up her career. These characters, and I would love to develop that into like a little show, or
that would be nice.
Something.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how old you are, you just have to feel like you're getting older, period, whatever that means.
Yeah, definitely.
All the things in the universe that also age. In other words, we're not the only ones. Everything ages, in nature and everything else. That's my little pet project.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny. There's a song from another you just made me think of a song from another puppetry show that I grew up with called Bear in the Big Blue House.
Oh yeah, sure.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's a song in there called Everything
great
Changes.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
it kind of made me think about that song. It's a beautiful song.
Yeah, that was a sweet
yeah.
show. I knew
Oh my gosh,
Rick
yes.
Fernandez, right?
Oh yes,
Yeah,
we had him on as a guest previously. Yeah,
Yeah,
Previous
he's really
guest.
nice.
he's great. He's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I worked with
Absolutely.
him on a few projects too, and he's really great. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
and he directed on Sesame later on.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
work with him on that way because I was already off the show, but I'm
Right.
Yeah.
sure he was really good. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he
Yeah,
definitely
and
was.
and recently both Wick and Tony actually met each other recently.
Again, yeah. Anyway,
Again.
Oh,
Again.
really?
yeah.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
like reunited,
Yes.
kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it's interesting to see what other people are doing, like different, when you haven't seen them for a while, and then like, what projects have they taken on, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Absolutely. So as a writer, what challenges would you say you faced during your career?
Oh, that's easy. When you hand in a script, or any other thing, if you're given feedback, what are you going to do with it? Are you gonna just say thank you and I will make it work? Are you gonna collapse and fall apart, and have to peel yourself off the floor? Are you gonna try to take those comments and try to put your own vision back in with that, even if the comments don't relate to what you were trying to say? There's no right answer.
Mm-hmm.
Every single time is different. But I smile, but I always say, if I were ever to teach a college course, let's say, that I would teach this course called rejection. And
oh my gosh.
Every class you come to, you have an assignment, and I'm going to somehow, I'm sorry, I'll just hang this thing up. Every class you come to, you're going to get some kind of a revision that you have to make. And because I think the people who do the best as writers are the ones that somehow handle that well. You know what I mean? Who don't get all bent out of shape over it and just say, okay, however I'm going to deal with this, I'm going to make it work. If it's not my vision, I'll, maybe this isn't going to be the best project, or maybe I can convince these people, whatever it is. But the ones that get stuck in it and say, I stink, I'll never do this again, are the ones, you're not doing yourself a favor, because I think it happens a lot. It's just, it's collaborative. Yeah. Writing in this business is very collaborative, sometimes more than others, but
definitely. So for anyone watching or listening who wants to get into writing, what would you say is the biggest piece of advice you could give to anyone who kind of wants to get into that field?
I think to believe in your style, and if something if you don't get a writing job, or a script doesn't work because someone didn't accept it, or wants you to change it, know that it may not reflect your style, but to respect your style and respect your talent, and know that don't let it go just because people have comments, because comments come for all kinds of reasons, sometimes very good reasons, and you learn from them, but sometimes it's just someone wants to put their stamp on something, and it's not really the best way to go. Sometimes it's all kinds of things. It's who's to say? But I think hold on to your own gift, and believe in yourself, and I think that's what really is important.
Well, really, with any career, there's definitely going to be setbacks and roadblocks, but you just got to keep your head up high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and know, like, this wasn't right for me. It doesn't mean I'm a bad writer. It just, this wasn't the best project for myself. And to tell you the honest truth, sometimes it is better looking back. It's hard to do this when you're in the midst of it. If something isn't working, you should back out. If you realize, what, these are the wrong people, or this isn't really something I do well, it's not a bad thing to say, what, I think maybe, somebody else could do this better. I'm not saying I'm making a negative picture here. I don't mean to, but I think sometimes, you look back on, when you've had a lot of different experiences, you look back sometimes and say, well, how might have this gone better? Or not,
right.
And then other things go very well. So, it depends. Yeah.
So, Are there any words you'd like to say to those who are watching and listening who have supported your work over the years?
I guess just thank you so much for taking a chance with me. Every time I get a writing job, someone's taking a chance, and thank you for respecting what I had to give and being wonderful. And I especially, most especially with the beginning of Sesame Street, it was a real gift to work with the original people, who created that show.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Big thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
So if people like to contact you, where can people find you?
LinkedIn under, CATHITUROW at LinkedIn.
Nice.
I'll read
it.
Nice.
Nice. And your LinkedIn will be in the description down below.
Okay.
People to connect with you, yeah. So now, since we're about to wrap up, this is the last question we ask to all of our guests. So, of course, this podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. So, in your own words, when you think of nostalgia, what do you think of, or how would you define the word nostalgia?
I guess something that you look back on and makes you smile, and you can find something the good in it, something wonderful about it that you want to bring to the present.
Definitely.
Yes. Great words.
Yeah.
Definitely. Cathi, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was a blast.
Yes.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you,
I'm
Cathi,
impressed with all you guys. You really know your stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say, thank you for make this happen, and thank you for what you've done to be a part of our lives, and keep up your good work and see what's next for you.
Thank you. And you know what? Also, if you do have a chance to email me, let me know when this will be on. Where
for sure.
It.
We'll let you know.
Okay.
We'll let you know for sure.
Okay.
Yes.
For sure, definitely. And for all of our viewers and listeners, this brings another episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show to a close. We've absolutely enjoyed our time with Cathi Turow. Cathi, thanks again.
Cathi.
Thank you. It was so much fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you all next time, everybody. Remember to keep nostalgia alive. Goodbye.
Take care, everyone. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show interview. Be sure to follow Jake and the crew on social media and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.